Ian, take it away.
Okay, welcome everyone. So what we're going to use right in here is this kind of top-down view in the middle. If I need to explain anything, I'll try to do it out here where you can see it. This tape on the table is just so I have a bearing about where the center of my screen is. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the process of putting together one of these bee hotels. So to start with, if you received a kit, you should have a series of pieces of lumber in it. We'll go over the contents of the kit first. And each of these will have a letter associated with it. I might refer back to these by letter at some point, but I can also go through and tell you what pieces we're using as we go. So you should have 7 pieces of lumber altogether, and we'll put them together today. The other thing that you'll have included in your kit is a packet of screws, and you should have 23 screws in there. So we'll be using those as well. Then I have some other materials that you'll need to put this together, and then they're not included in the kit, but it's good to have on hand. The first thing that I have is a drill with both a drill bit and, sorry, I'm just going through my supplies, both with a drill bit and a T10 star bit, which is what's going to be feeding the screws that are in your kit. I don't think they necessarily have to be those kinds of screws, but these are the fasteners that we gave out for this workshop. The other thing that I have will be pretty beneficial is some masking tape or some painter's tape. I have a tape measurer to do it, and then I have some clamps over here as well. In addition to all this, I've got some wood glue, which we'll be using to also anchor this in addition to the fasteners, and we'll be putting this on about every joint. So I think in the interest of time, I'll want to go ahead and get started. Some of this I do may be a little quick and sloppy, and that's only because I want to get through the entire enclosure in the time we have together, but I encourage you to take all the time you need to get these joints fastened really well and get these fittings really good. Oh, I also have some paper towels over here because I like to apply wood glue with my fingers. That's a personal choice, but I'll use that to clean up any wood glue that I spill or that gets on my hands. If you are sourcing your own lumber for this, I think it's an important point to make is that you will need a miter saw that's capable of 45-degree bevels. But I think that's the only special cut that you'll need. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. And if you have directions in your kit, it will walk through all the pieces of lumber you'll need for this project. So to start with, we're going to take our backing piece, and then this is labeled E in your kit. And then we're going to line it up with one of your C pieces. Let's see. Because you'll have 2. I think I'm going to use this one. Some pieces of my kit are slightly warped, so we'll have to account for that. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I want to get the flattest piece I can to start with. How we're going to set this up is we're going to put them together like this, and we're going to join them with glue and fasteners to make the first joint of our screw. Sorry, the first joint of our hotel. The way I like to do this to kind of anchor everything in place is I like to take my tape to start off with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create a hinge with the tape where it opens like this, and then I can apply wood glue to this inside edge right here, and then keep everything kind of locked in place without having to just like hold it, before I put the fasteners in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Make sure when you're lining this up that you have a nice angle between the wall and this back enclosure. The way I do this is I take about 3 pieces of masking tape. Make sure you can see this on camera. And I'm just going to apply this to the back. One sec. And what I want to do is I want to get the fit pretty good right here, and I want to get it as tight as I can. So I'm going to hold these pieces in place. Also, what I could do right now is I could use a clamp to hold it in place, and that's a good idea if you have them, but you might not necessarily. So if you do have clamps, I'd encourage you to use them to kind of set here. You can also get away with just using clamps if you want, but I'm going to use it right here just to kind of hold it in place. If not, you're going to have to just kind of hold it with yourself or with a partner. And you want to get this tape as tight as you can around that edge so that you end up with something like that. And then I'm going to go down and do this a couple more times. And I might not do this for every joint, but it's nice to show like how you can join two pieces if you just need to use tape. Because not everyone has clamps at home, I know. So again, make sure that it's very tight as you go around the edge and really anchor that in there. And then you'll wind up with something like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this clamp off because the clamp is sitting right where I need to put the last piece of tape. I'm going to set one right here. Oops. I'm going to make sure that that's really locked in before I go ahead and do it, because you don't want your edge moving all over the place. Okay. You can also go ahead and apply a fourth piece of tape down this edge. And lots of times I do that because you want to set this edge as well as you can. And if you're doing it at home, I'll just show along the length of it. Like this, make sure it's locked in place first, because you want this really tight. Like that. And then that kind of creates a hinge. So what you can do at this point is you can open it up based around that tape and then close it. And this makes it easy to apply your glue and hold it in place while you screw in the fasteners. So I'm going to grab some of my wood glue. I'm going to turn it like this. And I'm going to apply it to this inside E edge right up here. What if I opened it? Put some on the edge. And you want to be generous anytime you're using wood glue, because someone's going to absorb into the wood. So you kind of want to get as much as you can. And then I kind of smooth it out with my finger like that. Those paper towels that I brought are already paying off. And then you can take that and you can provide that counter pressure, and you notice that it's already sitting in. And then if you need to, if you don't have a clamp, you can take another piece of tape and you can actually wrap it around both sides and hold it in place with just tape. I have a clamp, so I'm actually just going to clamp it here, but you wouldn't have to if you didn't have a clamp. Okay. If you see some of that wood glue coming out, that's totally fine. We can always sand it off. We can always wipe it off, whatever we need to do. It's not a big deal right now. And then what you want to do is take your clamps, anchor it in place, and we're going to put 2 screws in here. One at the top right about here, and then one at the bottom. What I've found when working with the wood that I've been using is I have gotten more success with pre-drilling holes before I go in with my screws. You can probably go in with your screws as well, just going straight, but I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill just because it's been working better for me in my practices of building this hotel. If you're going to pre-drill and you want a bit, you can find, these are, which side? Sorry, one sec, I'm just consulting my table. You have your drill bit, you have your screw. Let's see if I can get a good shot of this. Let me take my bit out so I don't accidentally cut open my hand. But if you hold them up, this is a 764 screw. You'll notice that it covers about the body of the screw, but not the flanges where it's going to grip into. I don't know if you can see that, but that's also a way you can tell. I just look it up on a table though. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill my holes. And I'm going to go right here and right here. I'm going to stand up so I can do this. Trying to get a good angle, but also I don't want to like just hold it up. We'll do the next one. And again, you don't necessarily have to pre-drill before you put your screws in, but I've gotten more mileage out of it, and it definitely will make the screws go in easier. Okay. Next, I'm going to take my star bit and go ahead and put it in here.
Ian, while you're doing that, just a quick question. I think we cut out a little bit, but Aaron was asking here, what size drill bit were you using there?
So this is a 7/64 drill bit, but you can also get away with a 1/8 inch drill bit for these screws.
Awesome, thanks.
So if you're pre-drilling, yep, either one should work. And when you go in with your screws, you'll want to go in a little bit past flush with the board. And the reason for that is we're going to cover them with wood filler afterwards. So you want the screw to be like entirely embedded in the board so that it can be covered up completely. We're going down here. Just anchor it. Okay. So we've gone ahead and put our first joint in. You'll notice that I put those into the wood board completely and everything's lined up. And now that it's screwed in, I can take off my clamps and I can take off my tape. And you can leave the tape on if you want, like whenever you're screwing in, you can go straight through it and it doesn't matter, you'll just peel it off afterwards. But it also can be nice just to clean up, your house as you go. Another nice thing about using tape on those is that it will keep a lot of the wood glue off. I don't know if you can see this, but it actually just falls out onto the tape most of the time.
Ian, can we get a good view of that, of the screws into the wood there? You were a little bit high. Yep. There we go.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit more forward for us. That's it.
Yeah. So you can kind of see. It goes in. And if you've got a lot of glue on your joint, it doesn't matter. You can just leave it there. It can always be sanded off later. Something that is also good about the wood glue, aside from just being an anchor, is it's really going to seal in, the contents of the house and keep them from getting wet. Because if you have like a crack in here, that's another place where water can get in, like as you're building any kind of outdoor project. So that's your first joint done. The next one, you're going to take your 2 D pieces. These are going to be the 2 smallest pieces that you have right here. And one is going to go in to make the bottom. And then you're going to put another one further up, 3 3/4 inch from the top of that one. We'll go ahead and do the bottom right now. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll kind of show you how to get started. First thing is that the table is really good at making things level, so you can use that. But we can also just keep employing the same tape method that I showed earlier, where you can just cover the edges with masking tape, create a hinge, and then put the glue on. You can also, if you just need to go fast, you can also just lay the glue down, kind of fit it in, clamp it, and then screw it in. But if you want to really get that lined up, I like using masking tape for any of those joints. And then if you ever have something moving that shouldn't be, just put some tape on it.
And you wouldn't want to use you're using a masking tape or a painter's tape, but you probably want to avoid some of the stronger tapes, right? Like duct tape probably isn't your friend in this job.
Absolutely, because the biggest advantage of masking tape or painter's tape is that it comes off. You can just pull it off. Anything stronger is going to leave residue behind. It's going to be hard to remove. It's not what you want to use. So the big advantage with using that masking tape is just how easy it comes off. So I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to go ahead and clamp it. Sorry, if I ever wind up like coming too far back, just let me know.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, to account for the camera, like I always kind of want to work right in front of me, but I'm kind of having to hold my arms out as I go. But hold this right here. I have a couple of clamps, and it comes in handy for something like this, because if you just clamp one side, you're going to notice it's going to kind of come off of it. So clamping both is always preferable if you can. Again, not everyone has clamps. If you don't, I would just recommend using tape to hold things in place, kind of serving as makeshift clamps. But if you do, you get some pretty nice holds in there. Go. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. And this is what's going to be a lot of this build along session. It's just going to be us drilling pilot holes and putting screws in as we go along. So take as much or as little time as you need here. Really get things looking nice, because it will just help a lot more down the road if everything's lining up. All right, so I'm going to turn around. Let's do it one more time. Okay. I'm going to end up putting a screw here and one right here on the base of this, right against the edges. But first, I'm drilling my pilot holes. Okay. After every pilot hole goes, I just switch over to my bit. Sorry. And we're going to add 2 more screws in. It just goes a lot faster and easier if you already have those pilot holes drilled in. So I recommend it. Also, if you have, I know for this drill, it was, I had to go find like the right bit for this particular screw, because I didn't actually have it in the makerspace. If you like have it with a screwdriver, but you still have, you know, that drill bit, which I think most people would, it's actually not too bad doing these by hand with just a screwdriver as well. All right. And then taking a look at what those look like right in there. Go ahead and take our clamps off. Then we have the first section. Now the next one we're going to need to measure a little bit. 3 3/4 of an inch from the top of the bottom one right there. I've already gone ahead and marked it. on mine, we're going to go ahead and install that second D shelf. And then where you're going to install it is going to be, the bottom of that is going to hit that mark where you put in right there. So if you see that, if you can see my marker, you're going to put it right in there.
Yep, we see it.
Cool. Good to know. Okay, then I'm going to apply some wood glue. Let me move that forward a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and anchor that in place. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and clamp this in. Again, we're going to use 2 clamps to do it, because we want to get both those edges if we can. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Make sure everything's tight. And then we're going to put our holes right here and right here. These are probably the hardest holes to just gauge by looking at it on the whole build, like where the screws or fasteners are going to go in. So it's always advised, you can always just measure it down as well. You know, so like from the very bottom, that's right at 5 inches, like in the middle of there. So we can just measure our holes from the bottom of our B hotel and put them in at 5 inches. And that'll be totally fine. So, sorry, I have a lot of tools here. The important one to keep on hand's a pencil. 1 second. I see it. Let me grab that. All right. So now that I have my pencil, I'm just going to find it on here, and I'm going to mark off where 5 inches is to make these cuts. Right there. Okay. Got them. Again, I'm just going back to my drill bit, and I'm going to go ahead and drill in my pilot holes. By the end of this, we'll all be saying it together. Okay. We'll go ahead and put it in. Yep. And then all we're doing here is putting in our screws. And here goes the other one. And if anyone has any build questions, just let me know. I know like sometimes it's like.
Yeah, and as I told everybody, you can put your questions in the Q&A as you have them, and I will pop in and ask Ian.
All right.
Oh, Christine's got a great question here. If you wanted to paint this, Should you paint it before constructing it, or would you rather wait until afterwards?
I would, for this one in particular, I would wait until afterwards. And the reason for that is that we're going to put we're going to put fill into it. So like all these holes right now, it's recommended that you put wood fill over the screws to hide them. That's why I'm not worrying too much about the location or lining them up neatly. So if you put wood fill in over like something that's painted, you're going to have to repaint those areas. So
Right.
I think it makes sense just to wait. Also, one of the other things is if you really want to fill up these gaps in here, like make it really watertight, you can also come back in with some kind of filler after the fact, like wood filler or epoxy, and like fill in these gaps if you need to. So I would paint it afterwards, but just from that reasoning, but you always could paint the boards before, I guess, if you don't mind like the look of the screws or you know, like the filler kind of showing up against your paint job.
Great, thanks, Ian.
Yeah, no problem.
I painted mine after. It was a little bit annoying to paint the inside, to get in there with the paintbrush, but it worked out fine.
And then this next one's easier. Basically what we're going to do is go into the back. And you see we've got this little like kind of split showing up here on here. We're going to put 2 screws back in here to fasten this bottom board to the rest of the house. So I'm going to go ahead and add one in. I'm going to put 1 clamp in here for this side because you can see my wood's kind of coming up on the bottom. So I want to clamp that in place so it's screwed in correctly. But the front looks good. This corner looks fine. Then you see you can really hold in that gap right there. I'm going to put my 2 pilot holes in on the bottom here. See, I also have this, you can't see it on screen, but I have a desktop vise also off to the side. I might go ahead and throw this one in the vise, which is a bummer because you won't be able to see it. But basically I'm going to vise it in like this. Right now my clamp's holding it in. So if I try to kind of balance it, it'll be a little funky. So the vise is just here to help me if I need to do any drilling like this to hold the house for me. So I'm going to do that real fast and then I'll come right back onto camera. So I apologize for going off screen for a little bit.
No worries at all. Hey y'all, Alyssa's still here. If you've got any more bee questions, you can put them in the Q&A too. She's busy typing up answers to everybody. Also want to give a shout out to the Girl Scout troop that's joining us. The Cadet Junior troop. Welcome, happy to have you. It's gonna be some happy bees.
Absolutely.
John's gonna do this for his 4-H project. I feel that, John.
Yeah. All right. And if you're trying to talk to me right now, I'm sorry, my headphones dropped out, but I just want to get these screws in and then I'll come back to you, I promise. Again, we're going a little quick here. And the only reason is because I'd like to get the hotel finished before our time is up. But remember, just take as long as you need, clamp it down as much as you need, tape it in place if you need to, because you can take longer than I am here. All right, so there's our 2 screws in for the back. And I'm plugged back in so I can hear you once again. And that's lined up pretty well on the bottom. And then we can go ahead and go to the next side. So for the next part of this, we're just going to be putting on the other seawall. That's going to go right here. We're going to line it up. If you look on it, you'll see that it's a little warped. That's okay. We can work with it. If we need to, we can like fill the gaps in. I don't know if you can see the gap right there, but that's totally fine. It's something we can work with. All right. So again, I'm going to apply a generous amount of glue to these joints. I'm going to clamp it down, drill my pilot holes. This time I'm going to be doing a few more because we've got more to do for this joint. But as soon as they're on, we'll be ready to go to the next step. Yeah. Then we get some fun holes to drill. So I'll show you how to do those as well. So just again, gluing up right here. Put more wood glue than you think you need on there. It can always be sanded off later, and it's going to, like I said, it's going to soak into the wood after you put it down. All right, I'm just going to smooth it out with my finger. Don't be afraid to get it into these like little, if there's like little gaps here too, because it will actually kind of seal those up as you go, and it will just make the whole bee hotel more waterproof.
Ian, what's special about wood glue?
Like in particular, I think it's, man, I don't know like chemically what it is, but like I said before that it absorbs into the wood because the wood's going to soak it up. So I think part of it is the consistency, that it's going to like soak into the wood, but also harden and pull the other side of the wood into it. So as far as like something like super glue that bonds like instantly, this takes a pretty long time to dry or cure, which is like 20 to 30 minutes for the one I'm using. But part of that is because it needs that time to soak into the wood. Rather like if something like super glue like was put on this, it would honestly, it'd be very brittle because like I could just like snap it off because the bond would only be like with the glue itself. It wouldn't be anchored into the wood like this wood glue is. Okay. And I feel like, so for this one, I don't even think I'm going to clamp it. I think I'm just going to hold it down because I have a nice base to work from. Just need to make sure everything's lined up before I do. No, I'm going to clamp it. It's always better to clamp it because like if you don't, like what's going to happen is you're going to shift it like after you cut a pilot hole and it's going to be in the wrong place and it won't be good. So even though it's easier to work with right here, I think I'm going to go ahead and put a clamp on. Or we could just use tape and hold it in place. This would actually be a great place to use tape because we have a nice solid base. We can just start holding it down because all we have to do is anchor it. Like we just don't want it to move. So tape works totally fine for that. And in this case, will work really well for just holding it for our needs. I just lay some down. It's always like the worst is working with tape on camera because like, when you can't find the edge of tape, or it's like getting stuck to your fingers. Like anytime that I'm on camera working with tape, that's the same kind of thing that happens. It's just like, I'm doing pretty well today, but generally it's just like, I can't find the edges. I don't know what's going on.
Tape loves to make a fool out of people, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does. But yeah, it's behaving pretty well today. Okay, so I'm not really creating a hinge here. I'm just holding it together with tape, but the reason for that is I don't need to. All the glue's already on there, and I just need to put my screws in. So we're going to put 2 on this side, 2 on this side. Yep. And then 2 right here for the other D section up top. So altogether, we're going to put 6 screws into this side. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the holes for those real fast. Again, you might need to know where the board on the inside is in relation to everything else, but you remember we measured on the other side, it's right there at about 5 inches. It's about the center of that. So I'm going to just make my lines at 5 inches. We'll put one here. Last 2 pilot holes. Okay. So we've got them all in. Grab our fastener bit. And 6 screws. The whole time. I don't know if anyone is building along, but if you are, we'd love to see like photos of how they came out.
Absolutely. Anybody is putting together their kits. I agree with Ian's sentiments there. You can email me, applytecology@nccu.edu, or my email address, majewel@nccu.edu. I'm saying it very fast, don't worry, I'll give you links at the end. Or you can tag us on social media. I love a good social media post. So let us see your bee hotels, the progress of putting them together, where they end up living. Tag us later in the summer if you get any residents. We'd love to know who's taking up residence in your hotel.
And I have to say, I'm really relieved that so far I haven't heard any reports of, we got 2 left sides or anything like that. I was a little nervous packing them all up. I really hope everybody gets all the pieces.
Yeah, I hope everybody realizes that Elsa herself put these together, packaged them together, and shipped them out. So every single one of the kits has run through the hands of the bee expert herself. So
and her husband.
How many altogether did you end up assembling? Because that's not a small task.
I think it was Counting the ones you have, 44 maybe?
Wow. Yeah,
It was
that's a
an
lot.
odd number. There was something weird in the e-store that it didn't come out like exactly 40, but
All right. And so there we have everything secured in this level. And then we're going to just add the roof. And I think that's about it. So it's coming along pretty well. It looks better than my practice one, so I'm proud of that. We'll keep going. So now the roof is probably a spot you could trip up on. The first thing is that your A and B are different sizes. You can see on there on the camera that you've got about an inch, 3/4 of an inch, right there, difference between the two. Reason for that is we're going to let one fit like this, flush with that E piece, and then the other one is going to overlap it right there to kind of form, you know, that tight seal for the roof. So make sure if you put one on the other side, it's not a big deal. Just make sure that it sits flush, and the one that sits flush is the shorter one. So of these two right here, just make sure whichever one's shorter is the one that lines up flush with this edge, like that. All right, we're going to get started in installing it. This is also another great place to use tape. It's kind of a weird spot for a clamp because you don't have a nice, you know, like set of perpendicular edges to clamp from. You can clamp on a non-perpendicular surface, but it's going to kind of like you'll notice it starts like forcing like it down the more pressure you put on. So I'm just going to leave it and use some tape. All right, so we're lining this up, and it should be said that this is also flush with the back right here. You don't have any overhang in the back. It's all being channeled towards the front, where the front of those nesting materials would be. Okay.
hey Ian, when you've got bandwidth for a question, there's one in the Q&A that I don't know the answer to. Would it be safe to polyurethane over paint to outdoor proof it? I'm not enough of a materials person to really give a strong answer on that. Would you recommend that or no?
Let's see. Yeah, I think you could. And I'm guessing I think the only thing to like look at is whatever thing you coat it with. Like if it's like not just like a paint, like if you're doing it for like an outdoor purpose, is just make sure that it's rated for something like that's outdoors. Because like we have the wood fill that we're using. Like I'd recommend to use like an exterior wood fill. I don't know like if they have like exterior interior polyurethane, but like as long as it's weather safe, you should be good. And like most like finishing or coating materials should like let you know if they're designed for exterior or interior use. And for these, you would definitely want an exterior one. And I think the main difference is that, you know, wood outside takes on moisture. You know, like it expands and contracts a lot more than wood in our house. So generally those materials also expand and contract a lot more. And then it just like makes it so it lasts a lot longer. All right. This is my most creative tape job yet. Because it's hard to anchor this piece. It really wants to slide off. But we'll get it. Okay, so if you can see, we got something like that that's holding it on. And, oh, and if I take this piece off that was holding it on right here, just gonna tear through. I can actually still use it as a hinge. So I've got that right there, and I can still hinge it and get my glue on, which will help. So it's also gonna hold it while I slap that glue on there. You don't have to use your finger to like smear the glue in. Like I like it. I think it gives it a good finish. And it like just evenly distributes it. But if you don't want to touch the wood glue, you don't have to. You can just let the fasteners like, smush them together and that'll do the job. Okay. That's a left-handed rip. Let's switch. Let's put that over the top. Are we doing okay on time?
Oh, plenty. Yeah, you go
Oh,
right on ahead.
Oh, just making sure. So like I've practiced doing this fast because I was worried I would take too long. So
You're doing great, Ian.
cool. Let's make it. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, so that's anchored in place. And then we're gonna have a couple interesting screw placements on this one that work a little different from all the ones we've done so far. I'll show you what those are in just a sec. So with this one, you have one screw going in perpendicular, or sorry, yeah, perpendicular to the surface like the rest have. It's just going to go in about right here and go through. But you're also going to have one here that's going into this baseboard, a couple here, actually one here and one here, that are actually going to go in parallel to the one below it. So you're going to come in at an angle. And I'll show you how to make that easier for yourself when you're doing it. First off, for that one, you definitely want to do a pilot hole. Like, even if you haven't been doing pilot holes this whole time, and that's totally fine. Like, you don't need to. It just makes it easier for me. But if you will want to do probably a pilot hole for this one, because your screw, I'll show you on the surface in a second when I have my screw bit back in, but it's going to like bounce all over the place. So let me grab a couple to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. So up until now, our screws have been going in, perpendicular to the surface, just like that. This one is going to go in straight vertical and go into this board below. And so when you're making that pilot hole, I'll go ahead and jump on that one, I think. The easiest way to do that is actually to start your drill in perpendicular to that surface. And what you're going to do is just go in a little bit. And as you go in, you're going to change the angle. And you can pulse this or go straight, it doesn't matter. You're going to change the angle and go down like that. And then you can come up. What that's going to do is if you try to just start going straight down, your bit's going to start slipping, like it's going to go over the place, and you don't want it to because you want to get it right into the wood. So it's best to go in just a little bit and then just start angling it while your drill goes. And you can pulse your drill, or you can just go. I think either way works. I've had success with both. And then I'm going to also put in the pilot holes for the rest of them down here and the one up here as well. Knock them all out while I can. Okay. The one on top doesn't need to do this. You can go in straight, perpendicular to the surface like you've been doing. But this one and this one, you need to come down from above. Okay. I think I might have made my first mistake of this, which is not checking first to make sure I'm in line with that. So a good way to do this is just use your tape measure as a level. And just kind of gauge the center right there. Okay, so I think I should have gone a little higher. That's okay though. I can just take that pilot hole I did drill and then just fill it with wood fill, and it's totally fine.
Terry's got a good comment here in the Q&A. Terry's saying you can add a few grains of salt on your wood glue to keep the wood from sliding around.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Or I'm guessing sand works as well. Like,
Thanks, Terry.
yeah. So, yeah. But that's what I get for trying to eyeball it. You know, I'm always like, yeah, I can do that. I can eyeball it. It's fine. But that's how you get in trouble, like all the time. All right, and we're going to do that one again. And that should be it for now. We will go back and add a few more screws up here, but we'll have to put the other board in first. And it will be on the other side anyway, so we'll go ahead and put in our bit. So the screws are going in the same way the drill bit ended up. So you don't start the screw and then move it up, you just send them straight down in. This one again, remember we didn't have to angle straight down, we just went straight into the surface, so that one can go straight in. This one, which is this hole, not this one that we drilled without checking, also goes straight down into the wood. A little further. That should be good. All right. So now we secured this side, and we only have one more step, is to put this side of the roof on, and we should be done with the basic assembly right here. I'm going to clean some of this tape off real fast because I don't want it obviously between my two boards when I glue them. So I'm just going to do some quick tidying up. Okay. All right. This should be good to add our last one, and that should be it. But before we get, pat ourselves on the back too much, we got to anchor this one in, and we have a few more screws to go in as well. Because we'll need to put all the three screws we just did on the other side, but then we'll need to add two more into the top right here before we're done. So 5 more screws to go.
Elsa, you were showing us before that bracket that you would put on the back of the Spee Hotel to then hang somewhere. Are there other types of brackets like that, or is that the one that you primarily recommend, or are there any other techniques?
You can also, let me turn my video on. You could, if you wanted to just really be quick and dirty, like put your hotel up against the wall where you're going to mount it and screw straight through the back, or put bolt holes through the back and bolt it that way. That does make it harder to like take it down or, do whatever with it. So I liked the idea of the little mounting bracket. Honestly, I haven't tried it yet. It seems like a good one. I just found it on the internet. But yeah, you could get some kind of mounting bracket that, like, this is not the lightest thing on earth. Like, you want one that's rated for like 5-10 pounds. You can screw straight through it, or yeah, those seem to be the options.
Is it pretty important that they stay? I'm thinking about myself now. Is it pretty important that they stay? I mean, it must be really important that they stay pretty stable because I'm thinking about like putting a hook over the back and then I could hang it on a railing maybe, but then
Yeah.
it might swivel in the wind.
Yeah, I would avoid hanging it in a way that it would swing because bees coming in for a landing, like it makes everything way harder for them if their target is moving.
Hmm.
And also those little tiny larvae when they're first developing, like if they get bumped off of their pollen, like if they get shaken, sometimes they don't make it back on.
Mm.
So you do want it to be pretty stable. There may be some of the species who naturally nest in like twigs and stems who are a little more resilient to movement, but the ones who would normally be nesting in like a dead log, like ones aren't gonna withstand a lot of movement.
Good to know.
So we're trying to get our roof held on. And I'm trying not to add too many anywhere else because again, we're going to hinge it using the tape so that we can put all that glue on. This isn't really what you want from your tape as you go on. It should be a lot tighter. But I just have my set of 2 hands and I'm doing it live right now. So it's inevitably slipping, but you want it as tight as you can get on that hinge because anything less and it will kind of start to fall down, especially when you maneuver it to put that glue in the hinge. Okay. I'm going to add a few more pieces than I have in the past just because this is a bigger one and it's at that angle where it wants to slip down. Okay. And then I think we'll do one more across the length of it as well. So I try to hand it on.
Emily in the Q&A has pointed out that you could use a French cleat to mount the hotel, which is a great point. Can everybody see the Q&A? Emily's put some links in there to what a French cleat is, which is probably much better than me trying to describe it.
I'll pop those in the chat. Thanks, Emily.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
I don't know how well you can see that, but we can just put all the glue now in that hinge and not worry about it too much. Slipping around. Okay. There we go. All right, so the glue's on, it's relatively in place. I'm going to put one more piece of tape now over this side to kind of anchor it a little bit more because I really don't want it moving. But then we should be ready to do the pilot holes, put in the screws, and then we're done with the assembly. That'll be it. Now we haven't put any nesting materials in it, of course, but for the base like structure, it will be done at that point. So the screws that are going to go in here, check my reference. So the same ones we had before. So we're going to be put 1, 2, 3. The 2 are going to be angled down. And then, but we're also going to put 2 more perpendicular that are going to go into this other part of the roof. And then that will be it. So I'm going to go ahead and drill my holes.
We've got another attachment recommendation. John says a U-bolt assembly I've used on Bluebird boxes. works on round metal poles and metal triangular like fence posts. So that's also a great recommendation. Y'all are resourceful with your mounting hardware. Thanks.
Okay, and then we have the two that are coming straight down here and here. Again, learned my lesson from last time. I'm just going to get an idea of where that is exactly. This. I've also got a level floating around here somewhere because I'm doing it fast, but you know, making sure that it's like all in line with the level would also work right here. But I think this will be fine.
I just want to shout out quickly to David, who just tagged the Department of Applied Ecology on Facebook with this great photo of 2 hotels getting ready to go out into the world. David, they look great. Those are some pretty proud hoteliers there.
So all my pilot holes are drilled on the last part of the roof, and now I just need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws to go in. Also, I hope the drill isn't like, I know we're at the very end, but I hope it's not like super oppressive. I have no idea what the drill sounds like through the microphone.
You can barely hear it, Ian.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Oh, good to know. It is a little bit further away than I am, so maybe that helps. Okay, I think the first one I'm going to do is right here. It's slipping a little bit. And line these two. I had some good drill stories to tell, but I don't. There we go. All right. Well, yep. Yeah, I think that is it.
Awesome. Woohoo!
Yep,
It looks
absolutely.
great.
Looks good.
Looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, you could take your time a bit more. I have a couple gaps in here that might be related to, the wood warping a little bit. That might be related to me going too fast, but you can always fill those up as you go too as well with different fillers like wood filler or epoxy filler if you're going outside.
Just get one more Q&A. What's the best time to put these out? Which seems relevant to address before we all part ways.
It's a really good one. Yeah. Thanks,
Soon?
Lori.
Yes, good question. Soon, in the next couple of weeks is probably good if you're actually hoping to attract blue orchard bees, which are some of our earlier bee hotel residents. But if you miss that deadline, there's no worries. You will still get other, like the smaller mason bees, even if you get them out in April, maybe even early May, and then leaf cutting bees will continue to use them, as well as the solitary wasps later into the summer. So pretty much as long as you've got them out by like the middle of the summer, somebody will probably use them. And sometimes it takes a couple of years for bees or wasps to find them. So don't be too discouraged if nothing happens in your very first season, but I'd be surprised if it doesn't.
That's a really important question. Thank you for that, Lori. Thank you for your answer, Elsa. And again, I'll just thank again, Ian and Elsa, for your time. I'll thank everybody who hung out for the entire build. Thank you for your time. Otherwise, again, thank you all so very, very much. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Saturdays, and please tag us. We'd love to know where your hotels end up and who ends up occupying them too. So otherwise, see you next time, and thank you so much.